Alan Peters robbed the corner store. So did Jacavius Sturgis. Both were the same age. Both had juvenile records. Both scored the same points at sentencing. Matching scores should mean matching punishment. That's not what happened. Difference? The color of their skin. Bias. On the bench. A Herald Tribune investigative report. Day 1 of 4 pipeheraldtribune.com/bias. By Josh Solomon, Emily Lacaze and Elizabeth Johnson. Justice has never been blind when it comes to race in Florida. Blacks were first at the mercy of slave masters. Then came Jim Crow segregation and the Ku Klux Klan. Now, prejudice wears a black robe. Half a century after the civil rights movement, trial judges throughout Florida sentence blacks to harsher punishment than whites, a Herald Tribune investigation found. They offer blacks fewer chances to avoid jail or scrub away felonies. They give blacks more time behind bars, sometimes double the sentences of whites accused of the same crimes under identical circumstances. Florida lawmakers have struggled for 30 years to create a more equitable system. Points are now used to calculate sentences based on the severity of the crime, the defendant's prior record and a host. See Judges, A9. Judges. Continued from A1. Of other factors. The idea is to punish criminals in Pensacola the same as those in Key West, no matter their race, gender or wealth. But the point system has not stopped discrimination. In Manatee County, judges sentence whites convicted of felony drug possession to an average of 5 months behind bars. They give blacks with identical charges and records more than a year. Judges in the Florida Panhandle County of Okaloosa sentence whites to nearly 5 months for battery. They lock up blacks for almost a year. Along the state's northeast shore, judges in Flagler County put blacks convicted of armed robbery away for nearly triple the time. "It's unconscionable," said Wenge Newton Sr., a former St. Petersburg City Commissioner and Democrat, who was elected to the Florida House of Representatives in November. "That's like running a red light in a white car and your ticket is $100, and running a red light in a black car and your ticket is $300. The Herald Tribune spent a year reviewing tens of millions of records in 2 state databases, one compiled by the state's court clerks that tracks criminal cases through every stage of the justice system, and the other by the Florida Department of Corrections that notes points scored by felons at sentencing. Reporters examined more than 85,000 criminal appeals, read through boxes of court documents, and crossed the state to interview more than 100 legal experts, advocates and criminal defendants. The newspaper also built a first-of-its-kind database of Florida's criminal judges to compare sentencing patterns based on everything from a judge's age and previous work experience to race and political affiliation. No news organization, university or government agency has ever done such a comprehensive study of sentences handed down by individual judges on a statewide scale. Among the findings: broken vertical bar. Florida's sentencing system is broken. When defendants score the same points in the formula used to set criminal punishments, indicating they should receive equal sentences, blacks spend far longer behind bars. There is no consistency between judges in Tallahassee and those in Sarasota. Broken vertical bar. The war on drugs exacerbates racial disparities. Police target poor black neighborhoods, funneling more minorities into the system. Once in court, judges are tougher on black drug offenders every step of the way. Nearly half the counties in Florida sentence blacks convicted of felony drug possession to more than double the time of whites, even when their backgrounds are the same. Broken vertical bar. Florida's state courts lack diversity, and it matters when it comes to sentencing. Blacks make up 16% of Florida's population and 1/3 of the state's prison inmates. But fewer than 7% of sitting judges are black, and less than half of them preside over serious felonies. White judges in Florida sentence black defendants to 20% more time on average for third-degree felonies. Blacks who wear the robe give more balanced punishments. Broken vertical bar. There's little oversight of judges in Florida. The courts keep a wealth of data on criminal defendants. So does the prison system. But no one uses the data to review racial disparities in sentencing. Judges themselves don't know their own tendencies. Without checks to ensure equality, bias reigns. Judges say they are not racist. But centuries of racial tension in America, a lack of cultural understanding and negative stereotypes cloud their judgment. There's a built-in expectation that you're more likely to be violent if you're African American, and that's ingrained in some of our judges, said Martin McLean, a South Florida defense lawyer who handles death penalty cases across the state. In some counties, you can just feel the racism. Judges contacted by the Herald Tribune denied discriminating against defendants by race. They said they weigh each case on the merits, and punishments perceived as biased can be taken up with the appeals court. Some shifted blame to law enforcement. Others pointed to prosecutors. The public thinks judges get to do whatever they want, and that's just not accurate, said Lee Howarth, a retired senior judge in Sarasota and former chief of the 12th Circuit. Judges are just blessing what the prosecutor and defendant agree to. These sentences were handed to the judges on a silver platter. There's only a tiny percentage where I think the judges could be responsible for the disparities with things like age, gender or race. To be sure, sentences across Florida are negotiated before they reach the judge for final approval. But a Herald Tribune investigation found the system still leaves judges with the discretion to show mercy. They just show it more often to the people who look like them. Across Florida, when a white and black defendant score the same points for the same offense, judges give the black defendant a longer prison stay in 60% of felony cases. For the most serious first-degree crimes, judges sentence blacks to 68% more time than whites with identical points. For burglary, it's 45% more. For battery, it's 30%. You may have had a white child who got a slap on the hand or warning, said Karimu Hill Harvey, a retired judge from New Jersey, who now lives in Southwest Florida. A black child would go straight to jail. What they call leniency. 17-year-old Alan Christopher Peters entered the criminal justice system as an adult in 2008, when he stuck up a gas station in Lee County. Peters and his co-defendant made off with about $500 and another $140 worth of merchandise, court records show. The Cape Coral man, who carried a gun, was charged with armed robbery with a deadly weapon. The spreadsheet calculations determined 4 years was the lowest permissible prison sentence that the court could levy. Ignoring the guidelines, prosecutors and defense counsel agreed to a plea deal that called for no jail time. Judge Joseph A. Simpson, who took over the case from Judge Edward Voles Jr., concurred. Simpson sentenced the white teenager to probation without any incarceration. Judge Voles was not so lenient with Jacavius Sturgis. Just before 9 a.m. on a Monday in 2012, 2 men wearing black hooded sweatshirts and ski masks entered a Lee County convenience store and demanded money. They were armed with guns. They grabbed $300 from the register. They took the store clerk's wallet and jewelry. Prosecutors charged Sturgis with 1 count of armed robbery with a deadly weapon. Judge Voles gave the black teen 4 years in prison, also agreeing to a plea bargain between prosecutors and defense counsel. Both Peters and Sturgis have 3 confidential crimes on their juvenile records, which were not taken into consideration. Both were convicted of armed robbery in the same county. Both signed plea deals to avoid trial, and both were 17 at the time of their offenses. Both scored the same points. Nothing in public documents provides an explanation for why they were treated differently. Peters' file has been destroyed, according to the state attorney's office. My lawyer at the time said this was the best deal I was going to get, Sturgis said. I guess that's what they call leniency. The disparity between the 2 cases is not unusual. Since 2004, Lee County judges sentenced black defendants convicted of robbery to an additional 16 months on average compared with whites who scored the same points. Experts say similar outcomes play out in courtrooms across Florida. I have 2 kids. One is a white kid from the suburbs. The judge sees that the kid kind of looks like his son and talks like his son, and the judge thinks, this kid is a good kid. I'll give him a second chance, said Howard Finkelstein, Broward County's public defender. Second kid is urban, has. See Judges, 810. Lee Howarth, a retired senior judge in Sarasota and former chief of the 12th Circuit, said that in most cases, judges are signing off on sentences that the prosecutor and defendant agree to. HT Archive/2015. There's a built-in expectation that you're more likely to be violent if you're African American, and that's ingrained in some of our judges. In some counties, you can just feel the racism. Martin McLean, a South Florida defense lawyer. Judges. Continued from A9. A bounce in his step, from a poor community. When he speaks, his tone is a little different, and the judge thinks, this kid has a bad attitude. I'm not going to give him a second chance. Sarah Miles, a spokeswoman for the 20th Circuit, wrote in an email statement that judges in Lee County strive to avoid any appearance of bias or partiality. I can tell you that our judges sentence defendants AC,